John Morrison, 54, owner of Morrison & Son Auto Repair, was killed in his workshop by members of the Black Trail Gang. The Black Trail organization, led by Victor the Butcher Rodriguez, had been systematically extorting money from local businesses since 2013. Rodriguez, a 45-year-old former mechanic with a history of violent crimes, established a brutal reputation dealing with those who refused to pay protection money. Morrison's auto repair shop had been in his family for 2 generations. A respected businessman and single father, he had recently expanded his business and adopted his nephew, Alex Morrison, following the death of his sister in a car accident. Over the past 3 months, Morrison refused multiple demands for protection payments, maintaining his stance against organized crime despite escalating threats. The events unfolded when 5 Black Trail members arrived at the workshop in 2 vehicles. The gang methodically secured the premises, chaining the main gates and disabling the phone lines. At 11:40 p.m., while Morrison worked in the main service bay, the assailants entered through both the front and rear entrances. The attack proved extraordinarily brutal, even by the gang's violent standards. 2 mechanics, Steve Donovan and Thomas Williams, were systematically beaten and restrained in the workshop's pit area. The gang members took their time, deliberately creating an atmosphere of terror. Both workers sustained severe injuries, including broken ribs, concussions, and multiple fractures. The forensic investigation revealed that John Morrison fought back fiercely. Blood evidence traced his path to the office, where he attempted to reach a registered firearm in his desk. The gang members intercepted him before he could defend himself, and Victor Rodriguez took charge of what followed. Morrison was first struck from behind with a heavy wrench, falling near his office door. Rodriguez then used a tire iron, delivering no fewer than 15 distinct blows to Morrison's head. The first several strikes targeted non-lethal areas, indicating a deliberate attempt to prolong the victim's suffering. Morrison remained conscious through much of the attack. Defensive wounds on his arms and hands showed his attempts to protect himself until the end. DNA analysis from material under his fingernails matched Rodriguez, confirming Morrison managed to scratch his attacker during the struggle. During the attack, shots were fired from a 9mm pistol, terrorizing the restrained workers who witnessed the murder. Alex Morrison, the victim's 19-year-old adopted son, discovered the crime scene upon returning from a parts delivery run at approximately 12:15 a.m. The young man broke through the chained gates to enter the premises, finding his father's body in a pool of blood and the 2 mechanics bound in the workshop's pit area. The forensic investigation yielded extensive evidence. Beyond blood patterns and murder weapons, 7 9mm shell casings from a Glock 19 pistol matched ballistics from previous Black Trail crimes. Fingerprints throughout the workshop were identified as belonging to known gang members. The gang used 2 vehicles that night: a black 2014 Dodge Charger registered to Rodriguez's girlfriend, and a stolen dark blue Ford F-150 pickup truck. Both were later found burned in an abandoned lot outside the city limits, following the Black Trail's typical evidence disposal methods. This calculated murder temporarily strengthened the Black Trail's hold over the local business community through fear. However, the decision to kill John Morrison would ultimately prove their most critical error. The investigation of John Morrison's murder was assigned to detectives Marcus Ramirez and Jack Cooper from the Homicide Division. Both detectives had worked several Black Trail-related cases in the past, with a notably low conviction rate despite substantial evidence. The investigation took a dark turn almost immediately. Steve Donovan, one of the key witnesses and surviving victims from the night of the murder, was found dead in his apartment on November 17, 2015. The official cause of death was recorded as a prohibited substances overdose, despite no prior history of drug use. The toxicology report revealed a lethal dose of prohibited substances, typically unavailable to street-level users. By November 20th, critical surveillance footage from neighboring businesses disappeared from the evidence locker. The official report cited a storage system malfunction, yet only the files related to Morrison's murder were affected. Other evidence from the same time period remained intact. On November 25th, Thomas Williams, the second mechanic present during Morrison's murder, suddenly recanted his original statement. This change in testimony came immediately after his daughter survived a suspicious car accident. The brake lines in Williams's daughter's car had been cleanly cut, though this detail was omitted from the official accident report. The detectives' investigation focused primarily on rival gang activity, deliberately overlooking the extensive evidence pointing to the Black Trail's involvement. Multiple witness statements were either lost or altered. Key forensic evidence, including the DNA samples from Morrison's fingernails, was contaminated while in police custody. Financial records revealed regular offshore payments to both detectives beginning shortly after they took charge of Black Trail-related cases. Cooper's bank accounts showed deposits totaling $850,000 over 3 years, while Ramirez received similar amounts through a complex network of shell companies. The corruption extended beyond the two detectives. Evidence surfaced of systematic interference from higher-ranking officers. Captain James Hogan repeatedly refused to accept evidence from other precincts related to the Morrison case. The Internal Affairs Chief, Michael Stone, personally intervened to shut down 3 separate attempts to investigate the detectives' conduct. On December 15, 2015, the Morrison murder case was officially closed due to insufficient evidence. The closure came despite multiple unprocessed forensic samples and several willing witnesses who were never interviewed. The case file was buried in administrative processing, making it virtually impossible for other departments to review the evidence. 9 years passed. In March 2024, a man named Max Keller appeared at one of the auto repair shops controlled by the Black Trail gang. His choice was deliberate. The shop was well known in criminal circles as a front for the gang's operations. Keller's background check showed a 5-year prison sentence for manslaughter, supported by detailed prison records describing a bar fight that ended in death. Keller worked as a mechanic, spending his days repairing cars and getting to know other workers. His genuine skill with engines and automotive repair made him a valuable addition to the shop's legitimate business operations. The other mechanics gradually accepted him as one of their own, sharing stories about the gang's activities and operations during lunch breaks and after hours. Through his daily work at the shop, Keller began learning the patterns of the Black Trail's operations. He observed the regular visits from gang members, noting their vehicles, routines, and conversations. His position as a mechanic provided him with natural access to the gang's activities without raising suspicion. After all, he was just another ex-con trying to make a living in one of the gang's businesses. What the Black Trail organization failed to realize was that Max Keller's arrival marked the beginning of their systematic destruction. On April 5, 2024, the criminal organization Black Trace, led by Victor the Butcher Rodriguez, decided to test one of its newest members, Max Keller. The victim, Gregory Hayes, had repeatedly refused to pay protection money to the gang. According to official reports, Hayes was found dead in his garage the following morning. The crime scene revealed signs of prolonged torture, with tools commonly used in automotive repairs being employed as instruments of violence. The brutality of the murder left a significant impression on the leadership of Black Trace. Victor Rodriguez reportedly praised Keller for his creativity and efficiency, further solidifying his position within the organization. However, this event marked the beginning of a series of mysterious deaths involving former police officers connected to the unresolved case of John Morrison's murder in 2015. On April 10, 2024, the body of former Detective Robert Cooper was discovered in room 217 of the Sunrise Motel. Officially, the cause of death was ruled as an overdose of illegal substances. However, forensic analysis revealed extensive injuries consistent with physical assault. 5 days later, on April 15, the vehicle of another former detective, Michael Ramirez, plunged off a mountain road. Initial reports suggested the crash was accidental, but a detailed inspection of the car revealed deliberate tampering with the braking system. Experts concluded that the brake lines had been cut, rendering the vehicle uncontrollable. Ramirez's body was found trapped inside the wreckage, with no signs of defensive wounds, indicating he was likely unaware of the sabotage until it was too late. The pattern continued on April 20th, when Captain James Hogan was found dead in his suburban home. Hogan, who had served as the head of the Major Crimes Division in 2015, had notably refused to accept evidence related to the Morrison case from other departments. His body showed clear signs of prolonged torture, including burns, lacerations, and broken bones. Investigators determined that Hogan had been held captive for several hours before his death. 3 days later, on April 23rd, the body of Michael Stone, the former head of Internal Affairs, was discovered in the trunk of his personal vehicle, parked at the police department headquarters. Stone had played a pivotal role in closing the corruption investigation surrounding the Morrison case in 2015. Like the previous victims, Stone's body exhibited signs of extreme violence. His hands were bound with zip ties, and his torso bore numerous puncture wounds inflicted by what appeared to be automotive tools. A closer examination revealed traces of hydraulic fluid and grease on his clothing, linking the murder to someone familiar with mechanics. For instance, on the night of Cooper's death, Keller claimed to have been working late at one of the gang's garages, repairing a high-priority vehicle for a senior member. Surveillance footage from the garage confirmed his presence, though gaps in the recording prevented verification of his exact activities during certain periods. Similarly, on the day of Hogan's murder, Keller was seen attending a meeting at a local diner with other gang members. Witnesses corroborated his account, yet the lack of continuous documentation allowed for potential discrepancies. Despite these connections, authorities struggled to build a concrete case against Keller. The murders of former police officers sent shockwaves through the community, reigniting public interest in the unresolved Morrison case. In response, the district attorney's office launched a task force to revisit the Morrison case and investigate the recent string of murders. Detectives assigned to the task force reviewed decades-old files, interviewed surviving witnesses, and analyzed new forensic evidence. One breakthrough came when analysts cross-referenced tool marks found on the victims' bodies with equipment known to be in Keller's possession. Several matches were identified, particularly in cases involving specialized automotive tools. Additionally, phone records placed Keller near the locations of some murders around the estimated times of death, though the data was not conclusive enough to secure an arrest warrant. As the investigation progressed, investigators noted a chilling pattern. Each victim had played a role in obstructing justice in the Morrison case. Cooper and Ramirez had accepted bribes to suppress evidence. Hogan had blocked external probes into the matter. And Stone had closed the internal corruption inquiry without pursuing leads. By late April, rumors circulated within Black Trace about Keller's true intentions. Some members grew suspicious of his sudden prominence and questioned whether he could be trusted. Rodriguez, however, remained steadfast in his support, citing Keller's proven loyalty and effectiveness. On April 25, 2024, a violent confrontation occurred in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, resulting in the death of Mike Buffalo Torres, a key lieutenant of the Black Trace gang. According to investigative reports, Torres arrived at the meeting with armed suppliers accompanied by 4 bodyguards. Max Keller, who had recently gained Torres's trust, was driving the second vehicle. During the negotiations, a shootout erupted. The bodyguards were killed first, each shot precisely in the head. Torres was shot in the back of the head as he attempted to take cover behind a car. Ballistic analysis confirmed the fatal shot was fired from close range. Keller informed investigators that he was returning fire from the opposite side of the hangar during the shootout. Shell casings found at the scene supported his account. However, inconsistencies in his testimony raised suspicions among law enforcement officials. Witnesses reported hearing multiple gunshots from different directions, suggesting the involvement of more than one shooter. 3 days later, on April 28, the mutilated body of Alejandro Garcia was discovered in the industrial district. Garcia oversaw the gang's network of illegal auto repair shops. Forensic examination revealed he had endured hours of brutal torture. The killer used professional automotive tools, leaving marks from wrenches, screwdrivers, and crowbars. Particularly cruel were the injuries inflicted by a pneumatic impact wrench. The day before his murder, Garcia had met with Max Keller to discuss expanding the network of repair shops. Keller provided a solid alibi, stating he spent the evening repairing a lieutenant's car in the presence of witnesses. On April 30th, another murder occurred at the underground bar Last Chance. Ray King, known for his brutality within the gang, was killed during a mass brawl. Witnesses claimed the killer acted with chilling composure, first breaking both of King's arms and then methodically smashing his skull against the edge of the bar counter. Surveillance footage showed Keller attempting to break up the fight but, at a critical moment, seemingly accidentally pushing King toward the exact spot where the fatal blow occurred. On May 2nd, the bodies of 3 brothers, collectors for the gang, were found at the city dump. All 3 had been beaten to death with car jacks. The investigation determined they were last seen alive at the auto repair shop where Keller worked. He stated that the brothers had picked up a repaired vehicle and left. Surveillance cameras confirmed his account, but a 3-hour gap in the footage due to a technical malfunction prevented further verification. On May 5th, a particularly gruesome murder took place involving Thomas, the accountant Miller, the gang's chief financier. His body was found in the trunk of his Mercedes on the parking lot of an upscale restaurant. Experts concluded that death occurred after several hours of agony. The day before the murder, Miller had conducted an audit at the repair shop where Keller worked. By the end of May 2024, the gang's accounting department recorded an unexplained leakage of large sums of money. Victor the Butcher, Rodriguez, entrusted Max Keller with conducting an internal investigation. 2 days later, the bodies of 2 gang treasurers were found in their office. The killer had locked them in the room and pumped exhaust fumes from a running truck engine through the ventilation system. Signs of a safe being broken into and stolen documents were found at the crime scene. Keller reported to Rodriguez that he had tracked down the suspected thieves but lost them when they set fire to a vehicle containing the documents. Investigators noted that Keller's actions often placed him in positions where he could influence outcomes without direct involvement in the killings. For example, his role in driving the second vehicle during the ambush on Torres allowed him to control the narrative of events. Similarly, his alibi for Garcia's murder relied heavily on witness testimony, which could be manipulated or coerced. In the summer of 2024, the criminal underworld of the city was shaken by a series of brutal attacks targeting members of the Black Trace gang. These incidents, marked by their precision and brutality, signaled the beginning of a systematic campaign to dismantle the organization from within. Each event was meticulously planned, leaving behind a trail of evidence that pointed to an insider with intimate knowledge of the gang's operations. On June 5, 2024, a mass shooting occurred at the Golden Dragon restaurant during a meeting of local crime bosses. According to investigative reports, an unknown assailant opened fire with 2 handguns, methodically killing 6 high-ranking members of Black Trace. Witnesses described the shooter as calm and deliberate, moving through the room with military precision. Ballistic analysis revealed that the weapons used were untraceable, purchased on the black market. Security footage from the restaurant showed Max Keller entering the building shortly before the attack, but leaving abruptly moments before the shooting began. Investigators noted that Keller's timing allowed him to avoid direct involvement, while still being present at the scene. A week later, on June 12th, a powerful explosion rocked a warehouse used by the gang to store stolen vehicles. 4 members of Black Trace were killed instantly, their bodies burned beyond recognition. Forensic experts determined that the blast was caused by a remotely detonated explosive device planted inside the building. The victims had been locked inside the warehouse prior to the explosion, suggesting premeditation. Surveillance cameras near the site captured a vehicle resembling one Keller had access to, leaving the area shortly before the explosion. However, no definitive evidence linked him to the crime. On June 20th, another massacre unfolded at the city docks during what appeared to be a weapons deal. 5 members of Black Trace were executed with extreme violence. Witnesses reported hearing multiple gunshots followed by screams, indicating the victims were subjected to prolonged suffering before death. Shell casings found at the scene matched firearms commonly associated with rival gangs, leading investigators to initially suspect external forces. However, the calculated nature of the killings suggested otherwise. Once again, Max Keller was reportedly nearby but managed to escape unharmed, citing a last-minute decision to step away from the group for a cigarette. The culmination of this wave of violence came on June 25th, when the bodies of 3 lieutenants, key figures in the gang's hierarchy, were discovered in a downtown bathhouse. All 3 victims bore signs of torture, including burns, fractures, and ligature marks. The methodical infliction of injuries indicated the work of someone familiar with interrogation techniques. Security footage from the bathhouse showed Keller arriving with the victims, but leaving alone shortly before their deaths. He later claimed he had stepped out to retrieve something from his car, though no corroborating evidence supported this account. Max Keller emerged as a central figure in the investigation due to his repeated survival of these incidents. Witnesses consistently reported him being conveniently absent during critical moments or narrowly escaping danger. His rapid ascent through the ranks of Black Trace further raised suspicions, as he assumed leadership roles vacated by those who had been killed. However, Keller maintained plausible alibis for each event, often supported by corroborating witness statements or partial surveillance footage. The systematic nature of the killings suggested a coordinated effort to destabilize Black Trace. Each target played a significant role in the gang's operations, and their removal created chaos within the organization. Victor "the Butcher" Rodriguez, the gang's leader, reportedly grew increasingly paranoid, accusing surviving members of betrayal. This atmosphere of mistrust weakened the gang's cohesion, making it vulnerable to further attacks. Law enforcement agencies faced significant challenges in piecing together the puzzle. While physical evidence pointed to rival gangs or rogue elements within Black Trace, the pattern of violence hinted at a deeper motive. Investigators revisited old cases linked to the gang, including the unresolved murder of John Morrison in 2015. New forensic techniques uncovered connections between Keller and key events in the gang's history, though insufficient evidence prevented formal charges. By late June, rumors circulated within the criminal community about Keller's true identity and motives. Some speculated he was an undercover operative seeking revenge for past injustices, while others believed he was orchestrating a hostile takeover of Black Trace. Regardless of the truth, his actions had achieved their intended effect. The once powerful gang was now fractured and vulnerable. On September 1, 2024, a devastating fire consumed the abandoned building of the former auto repair shop, Morrison & Son, in the city's industrial zone. The inferno raged for hours before firefighters could bring it under control. When they finally entered the charred remains, they uncovered a chilling scene. The bodies of 12 members of the Black Trace gang, including its leader, Victor "the Butcher" Rodriguez. Forensic analysis revealed that all victims had been subjected to prolonged torture using automotive tools, wrenches, pliers, and other implements commonly found in mechanics' workshops. The brutality of the injuries was unmistakable, pointing to a deeply personal vendetta. Rodriguez's body was identified only through dental records, as the intense heat had left it unrecognizable. Among the ruins, investigators discovered a haunting message scrawled on a partially burned wall. "For Father," written in what was later confirmed to be the blood of the victims. This phrase served as both a declaration of motive and a signature, leaving no doubt about the driving force behind the massacre. During their examination of the crime scene, authorities found an unusual detail that added symbolic weight to the tragedy. Tucked into the breast pocket of Rodriguez's charred jacket was an old photograph labeled Morrison & Son, 2015. Experts determined that the photo had been placed there post-mortem, likely by the perpetrator. This discovery directly connected the events of 2015, the murder of John Morrison, to the fiery end of Black Trace. It was a deliberate act meant to underscore the motive: vengeance for a father whose life had been brutally taken 9 years earlier. The manner of Rodriguez's death was particularly brutal. Autopsy reports revealed that he had endured hours of systematic torture, with injuries inflicted by tools designed to prolong suffering. His hands bore marks consistent with being crushed by vice grips, while his torso showed signs of repeated trauma from blunt instruments. Investigators noted that the level of cruelty suggested not just a desire to kill, but to punish. The placement of the photograph in his pocket after his death added a final, mocking touch, a reminder of the crime that had set this chain of events in motion. A week after the fire, a package arrived at the police department containing a flash drive. The contents were explosive. Detailed documentation of every major crime committed by Black Trace over the past decade, including irrefutable evidence of John Morrison's murder in 2015. The files included financial records, intercepted communications, surveillance footage, and even confessions extracted under duress from key members of the gang. The information was meticulously organized, suggesting someone with insider knowledge had compiled it. The documents quickly made their way to the media, sparking outrage across the city. News outlets broadcast the damning evidence, exposing not only the crimes of Black Trace, but also the corruption within law enforcement that had allowed them to go unpunished for years. Former detectives Robert Cooper and Michael Ramirez, along with Captain James Hogan and Internal Affairs head Michael Stone, all implicated in covering up the Morrison case, were publicly named as complicit in shielding the gang. Their earlier deaths, once ruled accidental or drug-related, were now re-examined in light of this new information. Max Keller, who had risen to become one of the most trusted lieutenants in Black Trace, disappeared without a trace shortly after the fire. His sudden vanishing fueled speculation among investigators. While no direct evidence tied him to the murders or the arson, his involvement seemed undeniable, given his proximity to the gang's downfall. Witnesses reported seeing him near the site of several high-profile killings, always managing to escape unscathed. Additionally, his expertise in automotive mechanics and intimate knowledge of the gang's operations made him uniquely positioned to carry out such a calculated campaign of revenge. The flash drive also contained a recorded message addressed to law enforcement. In it, a distorted voice claimed responsibility for dismantling Black Trace and vowed justice for John Morrison. The speaker expressed regret for the collateral damage caused during the operation, but justified it as necessary to expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. Though Max Keller, or whoever orchestrated the takedown of Black Trace, was never apprehended, his actions left an indelible mark on the city.